Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love what you see, everything is for sale. Reach out to me. I am still Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. We buy what we sell what we buy, and we are always looking to build inventory. Sell me one watch or an entire collection. We pay cash, we pay fast, we walk you through the whole process, make it a no-brainer, and no upper limit on value paid. We will buy your entire collection of diamond set Breguet pocket watches from his own hand. Again, no upper limit on value paid. We also do trades, and we can often offer better value on a trade than on an outright sale. So to buy, trade, or sell, reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. Okay, jumping straight in, I often conclude with the most spectacular watch. It's rare that the first watch could rightly have been the last watch, and this could have been either, but I wanted you to enjoy the latest generation of a Lange Sohne Zeitwerk right up front. Just like that. As glorious as ever, the newest version of the watch is longer-legged with greater features and a revised movement. By longer-legged, power reserve via twin mainsprings is now 72 rather than 36 hours, and there is a new indexing button that makes it simple to adjust the hour without having to sweep through the minutes individually again and again and again to reset the hour display. This is one of the features that was added to the mainstream line and inherited from the Zeitwerk date. Now you can see 42 millimeters in platinum. It's the same shape and profile it's ever been, and the watch still wears large. I would describe it as full size rather than oversized, and on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, you can see how it fits and see how it sits. It's a dress watch to be sure, albeit one that has quite a bit of presence and can go toe-to-toe with rough and tumble sports watches, at least in terms of persona and visual impact. Now, the watch includes a dial that is made of sterling silver, except for this portion here, this time bridge, which is inspired by the 5-minute clock at the Dresden Opera. This is actually part of the movement right here, so you can see that it features rhodium plating on a German silver base with a sort of snailing across its surface, and then we've got this little clear sapphire right there. That's actually the pivot center for the discs displaying the minutes and tens of minutes. Now on the back you can see things have changed. Obviously the architecture of the barrel and the ratchet wheel is the most obvious change, but from an aesthetic standpoint we also have a refinement to the remontoire system where this bridge of steel, rather than looking a little bit like a broken arrow, it is now arrow straight from one end to the other. So we have a constant force device as ever, so that the barrel doesn't directly run the escapement. As a result, we have constant amplitude about the balance. It's adjusted in 5 positions, and it has an overcoil hairspring, which is a rare refinement on Lange watches. So between the 5-position adjustment, the free-sprung architecture, the overcoil hairspring, and the constant force device, despite the fact that this uses a power-intensive complication, this is one of the best time tellers in the Lange catalog. And you can see that the watch is purposefully large, as caliber L043.6 fills the entirety of the case back. It's not a big watch for the sake of size, it's big for the sake of what's inside. Now, of course, the ratchet wheel is different now. It has less of a overarching bridge than it did before. It used to be anchored directly to the bridge via a triplicate of screws. Here it's more conventional than in the past, but we have double solarization, that wonderful spiral graining, and as ever you can see that the ratchet wheel and crown wheel teeth, as well as the intermediate teeth, they've been micro beveled. Very special stuff, and all in platinum, very hefty. So we go from platinum to King Gold. Well, what makes it King Gold? Well, it's fit for a king, extra red. Hublot's King Gold is what you would call 5N in the industry. So not rose, not pink, but red. Now here on the Big Bang Mecha 10, you can see that it's gold toned inside and out. Externally, all of this has been set and finished primarily by means of Media Blast, which gives it a very smooth, soft glow rather than a bright shine. And that's in good taste given the size of the watch. flip it all over, you can see this is a watch designed to remind you of Meccano, or if you're in the United States, a Rector set. So for mechanically inclined kids, building contraptions out of gears and pivots and wheels and braces and struts, and this is designed to remind you of Meccano. It's 100 meters water resistant, and it has a 10-day power reserve. How is that possible? Well, let's start with the back of the watch. You can see this in-house caliber, which debuted in 2016, has 3 primary lower bridges, 2 of which carry mainsprings. And you can see these are enormous mainsprings inside skeletonized barrels. Now turn it all over, and you can see by means of rack and pinion, the primary power reserve indicator is driven by a secondary power reserve indicator. So let me show you how this works. We'll get the hands out of the way so they don't interrupt. You can see all the fun on the dial side. So we have the 10-day power reserve indicator here, and then we have a secondary one. You can see that the pinion is geared to the rack, which is geared to this power reserve, which is geared to this power reserve. Now, as I wind the watch, you could see that the red disappears when I've wound it so that it contains more than 2 days of power reserve. So the red right here only appears when you're down to your last 2 days of power reserve. Otherwise, it's black. Now you could see we have 4 days of power reserve. I continue to wind. Now we have 5 days of power reserve. And we have a slick system with a push button, quick release for the straps. So if you want to put leather on there or a different colored rubber, you can easily do so. Just reach out to Hublot. They have many straps for this watch. And you can see that really soft glow of the Media Blast is a perfect match here. We have a combination of ceramic and titanium for the single fold deployant clasp. We'll throw it on my wrist. And this rose gold or red gold that's fit for a king, you can see it is quite large. I would recommend you have a wrist of 17 centimeters circumference or larger to wear this. Although, truth be told, partly due to the downward cant of the lugs, this wears just fine. This is secure on my wrist. You just have to be comfortable with the truly oversized and otherworldly proportions of this monster machine. Now, let's say you want your rose gold in more compact and more traditional packaging. Well, Bethune has you covered with this 20-piece limited edition from 2011. This is the DB10 Reedition. Now, the original DB10 was considerably less capable of than the Reedition. 2 versions of the Reedition were made, 20 pieces in white gold, 20 pieces in rose. This is the rose. It features a date complication that was not present on the original watch. You could see Bethune now making its own dials as well as its own movements, giving you a quick set mechanism for that date, and Bethune also making its own cases. So this is not part of the DB25 collection. No, this is the original DB1 case profile with the cabochon or ogival lugs, the round case, the classical rosette guilloche on the dial, Arabic numerals, leaf hands, unsigned, historically referencing crown. Remember, historically, crowns would not be signed. So this is Bethune at its classical best, harking back to its original case shape of 2002 and channeling the DB10, which had seconds, hours, and minutes, but not the date complication. Also, the original DB10 didn't have a automatic winding 6-day power reserve in-house caliber, a very, very special movement with twin barrels crafted in Lauberson. It's big at over 30 millimeters. It's properly sized to fit this case, and it looks fantastic. With 6 days of power reserve, you can put this watch down for a couple of days and it will still run just fine. It's only 10.5 millimeters thick, and it's only a little bit over 46 millimeters, but like 46.5 lug to lug. So despite the fact that it's a 42, it doesn't wear anything like a 42. And you can see on my wrist, even pulling the strap somewhat tightly, it's low, it's flat, it's flush, it's relatively narrow across the wrist. If you're into Carrie Voudelaine and Moritz Grossman, F. Pigeon, H. Moser and C, Philippe Dufour, Patek Philippe, Vacheron, Lange, Audemars Piguet traditional dress watches. You're going to love this. This is the point of entry into the world of Bethune for the avant-garde skeptic who maybe loves the brand's standards but doesn't want something that looks, well, for want of a better term, all Star Trek and sci-fi on the wrist. And this DB10 Reedition of 20 pieces is exactly that. Now, taking a quick look at something that is probably as otherworldly as any de Bethune ever made, and just as inventive. Here we have from Ressence the original version of the Type 3, and you can see how with the Ressence orbital convex system, we have every individual indication pivoting on its own axis, but also rotating relative to the center of the dial. So it is a regulator. It's also a date aid, as we have the day right here and we have the date right here. Now the watch is more spectacular when you turn the lights on and you realize that this 44mm titanium case is barely there. Look how much case there actually is. Everything else is the sapphire over the dial and the sapphire over the case back. Now it is an automatic winder, and if you look carefully, you can see a little bit of the underlying mechanism here. Taking a look at the dial side, 37.5 milliliters of oil sits inside the dial, and because it has the same index of refraction as the sapphire crystal, you can read it without distortion from any angle. Here we have a day of the week indicator, and here we have the date indicator. You can see that we have this little combination of the hours, the minutes, and the seconds, and then we have the runner right here, the day right here, the minute, the hour. So, for example, what time is it? Well, you can see it is 1 because we have the minute at the top, and then the hour hand is right here pointing at 1. Now I'm going to advance forward. It's really a unique and original time-telling concept. So the question here becomes, what day is it and what time of day is it? Well, obviously you can see it's 4, but is it currently 4 in the morning or 4 in the afternoon? Well, let's look at our little day scale. You can see that those two little open hashes, see how they're hollow, whereas these other ones are solid? They represent the weekend days, and because this moves clockwise, you could see that we just hit Saturday, and we've moved slightly past the start of Saturday, but not that little index, the circle that would indicate midday. So we're looking at 4 in the morning on a Saturday, the 9th. That's how you read that. It does have an automatic winding ETA 2824 movement inside. It is incredibly light on the wrist. It's got a 36-hour automatic winding power reserve, though if you wish, you can wind the watch as well as set this crownless watch using the case back. See how I turn the case back? This can be used for winding and setting. Then you see the rotor in there. The watch has several bellows internally to allow for the expansion and contraction of the oil, and then a magnetic coupling between the base movement and the Ressence orbital convex system time display. The idea being that the movement and the oil are always segregated from each other, and Benoit Mintiens, who is the creator of Ressence, the industrial designer who designs these in Belgium, they're built in Switzerland, he told me that these are very simple to service because the dial is self-lubricating and sealed. All it needs to be serviced is the 2824 in the back. So these are actually quite easy to service when the time comes. And he also says very rarely does the oil filled module need any attention at all. We're going to take a look at two fantastic chronographs, one of which is very classical and one of which is very, well, it's its own unique style. So here at Classicism, we have the Breguet 5857, and we're going to fire this up here. You can see this is actually not a chronograph. This is a travel time watch. The chronograph is coming in a moment, and I'm able to make adjustments to my local time. We'll move it out of the way real quick. Now you see I adjust my local time like so, and it drives the date forward or backwards. Just like that. When I wish to set my secondary dial, I pull the crown out all the way, and now I set. You can see that there is a AM/PM indicator up at approximately 2 o'clock for the dial at the base. That's how this works. So if you're wondering, for example, is this indicating 6 in the morning or 6 in the evening, you can see this little pointer right here is pointing towards 6. So it is 6 in the morning. We'll do a quick lume shot so you get a sense of this watch's luminescence. There's really no shortage right here, and that is true of both dials. The case in stainless steel, 42 millimeters, robustly constructed, water resistant, over 100 meters with a screw-down crown. You can see there's tiny little guards in the profile. And then we have a case back. We'll open everything up here so you can better enjoy it. A contemporary caliber. You'll note the use of rose lathe technique on the rotor, which has a wonderful sweeping Nautilus shell style motif. We have a free-sprung balance with a silicone anti-magnetic hairspring, and you can see the remainder of the movement featuring deeply grooved stripes, bright mirrored bevels, and also bevels in the jewel sinks. Deeply impressive stuff. The dial made of solid gold and turned on a rose lathe with applied numerals. You can see that the dial features several different cuts, turned on a rose engine from a solid disc of gold, and then silvered to create this silver white shine. The strap, as you'll note, is fully integrated, giving the watch an impressive wrist presence. And a lot of folks prefer this previous generation of the Marine. The collection that came out in 2018 was not to everyone's liking, whereas the Chrono, the Dual Time, and the standard Marine Big Date from the prior generation were widely lauded for distinctive design and classical elegance, and that's exactly what we've got right here. Now here we have a watch that is a chronograph that combines classical elements with modernity. Now, if there's one problem I've had with the Louis Moinet Memoris, it's that oftentimes they've been too huge for their own good. Well, this Memoris Spirit that came out in 2022 is a grade 5 titanium limited edition of 60 pieces that is 40.7 millimeters in diameter. And what you can see is when I activate the chrono, the movement nicely fills the case. The two things fit hand in glove. It seems more natural than when a similar movement is used on the larger watches. Taking a look at the dial side, all the fun parts of the chronograph, including the lateral clutch and the column wheel, are on the dial side. It's a mono pusher. The finishing of the components is outstanding. Satin on the top of the steel parts with mirrored beveling on their edges, difficult to achieve on steel. You can see the crenellated towers of the column wheel, and all of the screws feature mirror polishing on their top. Rose gold hands with applied indices and quarter Arabic numerals down at 6 o'clock. Note that a bridge framing the time has been deeply beveled on its side and drawn to sharp points where bevels converge, and that the bevel is incredibly broad, mirrored, and attractive. There's media blast on the top of this bridge, and then lovely beveled sinks for the screws. You can also see that locating pegs used to locate the spring on the plate below, those locating pegs have been polished on their top. We have sapphire scales for running seconds as well as for chronograph minutes. And you can see how this works as the seconds hand rolls around. Instantaneous jumping minutes right there with the jumper spring and the pawl on the dial side. It is a beautiful treatment of Louis Moinet's long-running Memoris chronograph. A feature I happen to enjoy quite a good deal. Inside, you can see there is a little push button that allows you to incrementally micro-adjust the fit when it's on the wrist. You press the button, and then you have the ability to move through several detents. See how that works? Just like that. A clever design and much appreciated. Now, throwing the watch on the wrist, it wears beautifully. It's so much more wearable than its 45 and 46 millimeter larger brethren. And you can see it has a glass box style crystal that is dramatically domed and cambered, accounting for about 1/3 of the total thickness of the watch. Being almost all sapphire and titanium, this wears beautifully, and you can see how well it fits on my wrist. This is ideal for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters in circumference. The base movement is from Concepto, and you know that because if you turn it around, you could see that it has Concepto's distinctive regulator. And if you look very carefully, you can see the Concepto C on the base plate below the balance. But it's a handsomely executed automatic winder with stop seconds and 48-hour power reserve, all of this pivoting on ceramic bearings, with the finishing on the dial being truly world-class, and the execution of the column wheel and the lateral clutch profoundly gratifying. This is an awesome effort from Louis Moinet, and I don't universally say that about LM's watches. Okay, so This is a fantastic example of Hodinkee getting something right. We've spoken recently about Hodinkee's troubles and travails, and as this feature comes out, that's been all over the internet. I'm not going to pile on. I'm just going to say that Hodinkee generally does a great job with its collaborative house specials. And this right here is the Laurent Ferrier Classic Hodinkee. It is a limited edition of 20 pieces, sold in 2021, 40 millimeters in white gold. Is an exceptionally handsome variant of a watch once called the Galet, after its smoothed pebble-like shape, vintage-inspired unsigned onion-style crown, sort of a mid-century men's all-rounder dial. And we'll do a quick lume shot so you can appreciate it in its luminescent glory. This is not a sports watch, but it's definitely sporty as dress watches go, given the enormous amount of luminescence on the dial. And then we will turn it all over, and you can see the movement, manual wind with an 80-hour power reserve. Limited edition for Hodinkee. This one is number 13 of 20. 13 has always been a lucky number of mine. And then we have an 80-hour manual wind power reserve, a free-sprung balance with an overcoil hairspring, 6-position adjustment, which is one more than a standard chronometer, and vintage-inspired media blast on the bridges. Côte de Genève is something that would have come about in the 20th century primarily, whereas this represents more of a nod to the pocket watch here. Now, this movement is originally designed by La Fabrique du Temps or Louis Vuitton high watchmaking, and you can tell that 'cause it has their distinctive click spring, which is completely rounded, polished, and hybridizes the click and the spring all in one. You can also see that the teeth of the ratchet wheel have been polished and that the bevels here are truly broad and mirrored. This is deeply impressive stuff. The same treatment lavished on the jewel sinks, and then you can actually see where bevels come to sharp points on certain locations on the bridges, and then they give you a large gratifying inward angle on the cock for the escape wheel. Now, if you look carefully at the escape wheel, you could see that its teeth are actually hollow, and the anchor itself also has hollows. That can't be done by machining. That can't be done by hand finishing. That's created by a galvanic lithography process called LIGA that allows additive shaping of micro components. Think of it as 3D printing for incredibly small and intricate structures. And again, with an 80-hour manual wind power reserve on a single barrel, it's as technically impressive as it is beautifully made. Fits nicely on the wrist, highly recommended for wrists as small as 14 centimeters circumference. This is a fine all-arounder and a truly glorious effort. The next watch was a breakthrough when it came out in 2004, a world premiere from a Lange Sohne, part of the Saxonia family. This is the Lange Sohne double split, the first chronograph able to split both minutes and seconds. So you can see I've split the seconds, but if you look carefully, you can also see that there are two superimposed minute hands. So I can gauge the difference between two events up to 30 minutes apart and get an accurate reading down to the second, even the fraction of a second, concerning the differential between the two events. Now, it also features this flyback capability, so you can reset and restart without first stopping. You want more? You got it. Power reserve indicator up at the top, manual wind. Surprisingly, for a watch like this, it is fairly well loomed. The dial, made of sterling silver, it's then blackened. You can see the track outboard is a tachymeter scale, which is used for gauging speed of an object, such as a aircraft over a closed course or race car over a kilometer. The case is massive, but purposefully so. 43.2 millimeters in diameter. This is the original variant in platinum, and it's quite a thing to see and to feel. Now, on the reverse side, you note that we have two separate column wheels. One is the primary column wheel. The other is the split. Now, as the split engages and disengages, there's a decoupler system that will decouple the split second hand from the rest of the train. As a result, the stationary split second hand does not slow down the movement of the watch when it's stationary. You could see the depth of this movement. I don't need to wax eloquent about the finish. You guys are all knowledgeable connoisseurs, and your eyes don't lie. It's exactly as good as it looks. Steel, German silver, blued screws, polished screws, violet pivot jewels, bevels, stripes, freehand engraving, engine turning, satination. It's all here. This is as good as it gets. I'll throw it on my wrist so you can get a sense of how the mighty double split wears on the wrist of a tiny man. My wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference, and yet I could wear this. If this were my watch, it would be large, but no larger than my Zinn Easy M1.1, and I wore that watch every day for 4 years. This is an unbelievable piece. This would be a fun companion. You'll have it one up on any datograph you encounter. Patek, Vacheron, they need to bow and pledge their loyalty to the Lord of chronographs. This one is the vassal solely of the mighty triple split. Finally, the greatest watch on today's program is not the largest or the most complicated, but the one I consider to be the finest from de Bethune. This is the DB25 Moonphase Starry Sky. This is a rare sight, as we've got the watch in its 40mm case size that is uncommon, gem set along the case band with invisibly set baguette diamonds of absolute equal color, clarity, and carats. Now, this is a DB25, so a conventional round case, fixed lugs, and a solid dial. The dial is black polished, mirror finished, fire blued grade 5 titanium. So are the hands. And then we have small stars, the distant stars, made of little rods of white gold that are inserted into drillings. We have a toroidal track outboard using diamond hour indices. And then the stars of the constellation are diamonds. Now, if you take a quick look at the Moonphase, you'll note that it is actually three-dimensional. It's a sphere, and it has 1/2 white palladium, 1/2 blued steel. The blue side has 44 sapphires in blue. The white side has 44 diamonds in blue. We will advance that set of hands out of the way, and I will demonstrate how you can use the quick set on the Moonphase to enjoy the tumbling sphere of color. This is an incredible watch at a size that anyone can wear. Turn it over. This is done on a spinning wood plate. So with diamond paste and a spinning wood plate, de Bethune black polishes the steel cap to the base plate and the steel cap to the barrels. The same treatment is applied to the triple parachute shock protection bridge and springs, and then by filing and then hand finishing, continuously rounding and mirror polishing the bridge for the balance. We have 1, 2, 3 shock protection springs for the balance. That improves both durability and chronometry. Note that the barrel on each side includes delicate snailing on its cover, and that the ratchet wheel on this side, I'll try to get the gleam here, but the ratchet wheel has micro-beveled teeth. Take a quick look at the edge of the bridge for the triple parachute, but also on the barrel bridge and the barrel bridge cap. Look at the double layers of mirrored anglage. No other brand does that. 2 layers of chamfered metal plates. Take a look at the sinks for the jewels, deeply reamed and mirror finished. The company with its own hairspring, designed so that the 2 pieces are cut, manually shaped, and then micro-clamped back together so that they breathe concentrically like an overcoil, but they don't add the thickness that comes with an overcoil. Well, this is a manual wind watch. You cannot accidentally overwind it. 6 days of power reserve. Note the balance wheel. That's the 2010 patent balance from de Bethune with a silicon disc and a white gold rim. The idea being to reduce the impact of aerodynamic drag on timing, to reduce the impact of temperature change on timing, and to maximize the percentage of total mass of the wheel in the rim. And then though you can barely see it, there's a silicon escape wheel that reduces friction as well as reducing the need for maintenance. And although there's only a small amount of the barrel bridge visible from under the barrel bridge cap, you can see that has been striped with Cote de Bethune. Throw it on my wrist and you're struck by just how easily it wears. By the way, you'll note a full matching diamond set, white gold de Bethune pin buckle. And this is a gem watch that I could actually get on board with. First of all, the size is wonderfully compact. It fits under a cuff. It's beautifully sized for my wrist. This is really an option for him and for her, so consider it unisex, and the lugs are nowhere near overlapping the edge of my wrist. If you love this or any of our watches, reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.